Morning, everybody. Hopefully you're getting ready to go away for the long weekend, but I thought I'd do this quick video about the ATO's fuel response. So there's been lots of talk, obviously, the number one topic in the media, but what's the ATO doing about it? How might it affect you financially? So let's look into that. So this information mostly comes from the ATO website on a particular page. Now the ATO website is so big that each page has a reference number or quick code, they call it. So if you go to ato.gov.au and we're going to search for that number, it'll go straight to the page I'm talking about. So what is the ATO's fuel response? The two main parts are that they're halving the fuel excise for 3 months and that they're changing fuel tax credit rates. So what's the fuel excise? It's a tax that's charged on every litre of fuel you buy. You might be surprised to know that every time you fill up, you're paying 52.6 cents in tax on top of the fuel price. And then GST applies on that, so there's tax on a tax. And you'll also notice that that government increased that tax just a couple of months ago on the 1st of February by 2%, which is annualized 4% increase, which is interesting. But that rate's now going to be 26.3 cents per litre, which will just automatically translate to lower fuel prices for individuals and businesses. You'll just pay less at the pump. There's no ATO application required. The second element to that is that there's going to be changes to fuel tax credits. They're reducing some various taxes that affect very few people. Again, that's automatic. That'll just change how you fill out the fuel tax credit section of your BAS if that applies to you. So what are they doing to help small businesses? So this is from their website. The ATO is offering streamlined access to a new temporary ATO fuel response payment plan in response to the high fuel prices, the impact of high fuel prices on businesses. The website also talks about there actually are already, regardless of the fuel situation, options for small businesses. So if you have a need for cash flow or a tax debt, you can prioritize a tax return. If there are reasons why you are late, you can ask them to reverse penalties or waive interest. That's quite a common thing we do for clients. You might have a personal hardship, medical situation, whatever it might be. You can vary your tax installments. If you're paying your company tax quarterly, or you're a sole trader paying pay-as-you-go tax quarterly and you think that's too high, or you just need to reduce it for a quarter for cash flow relief, you can do that as well, and you can pay your tax over time. Payment plan, that's called. So these are already all available options. So what's different? What's new? It's the fuel response payment plan. So I've got a different ATO reference for that. But if you're on the first reference set that we gave you, you can scroll down to the bottom, go to ATO Fuel Response Payment Plan, and you'll find this page. So it's only available until the 30th of June 2026. So the reduction in the fuel excise is for 3 months, April, May, June. Also, this fuel response payment plan is for 3 months, April, May, and June. So payment plans already exist. So what's special about these? What's different about it? Well, firstly, the upfront payment is different. So no upfront payment is required under these plans. Normally plans are 24 months, these are 36 months, and they're effectively interest-free for 3 months. So if you owe the ATO money, they can charge general interest charge. You may have noticed that once you owe less than 10 or 11,000, they stop charging interest. They automatically waive it, which is interesting to know if you ever are in a payment plan. It's going to be 3 months interest-free, but as if everything in our world, subject to terms and conditions. So what are the terms and conditions? They're pretty reasonable. You just need to actually pay your payment plan for those 3 months, which I think is fair enough. And any outstanding lodgements you have, bring those up to date before June. So who's eligible for a fuel response payment plan? Well, firstly, it's for businesses. So you have to be an ABN holder. So that just includes not just companies and trusts, but also includes sole traders. So if you go to ATO online services for individuals, you'll just see the normal screen. But if you do that for a business, you'll see this pop up there saying check options. And you can fill out the form. So as well as being an ABN holder, you need to meet 4 other criteria. And briefly, that is you've got increased cost due to fuel prices. You've got a tax debt. So either you've got a new tax debt that's arisen, or you're struggling to pay old tax debts, and you have reduced capacity to pay that's due to fuel prices. So I'll go to the ATO website shortly to elaborate on that. And again, you've got to catch up on lodgements within 3 months. We saw that in the previous description. So let's go to their website and just jump down to eligibility criteria. No, sorry, wrong page. Eligibility. So let's elaborate on those 4 points. So you experienced an increase in business operating costs, and they're either directly due to fuel costs or because your supply chain, so the cost of deliveries, for example, so other people who are your suppliers, they have high fuel costs and they've passed it on to you. You have a new tax debt or unable to service an existing tax debt. And here's the more detailed description, I guess, from what I was saying before. You can demonstrate a reduced capacity to pay due to the high fuel prices. This is separate from a general downturn in business or ordinary cash flow issues. Okay, so it's not just that, I mean, practically speaking, people are going to use these payment plans to get a better payment plan than they would have got to help with the tax that they had anyway. But the way the ATO wants this to work is that if fuel prices hadn't been so high, you would have been able to meet your payment obligations, including your installments under existing payment plans. So it's just interesting they mentioned existing payment plans. So you might already be in a payment plan with the ATO, but you might then be able to get at a point where you might miss a payment, which means you default on that payment plan. And you could instead say catch up on your most recent lodgements and start a new payment plan with these special concessions. But again, it has to be because high fuel prices have been the difference between you being okay and you being underwater financially. And then your lodgements are up to date within 3 months. So we may cancel your payment plan if you're not up to date and you won't get your interest remitted. And again, June 30 is the cutoff date. So let's look at the ATO website, just did that. All right, so let's go and complete the form. So we'll press check options. I'll do this live. I've got a client example, but without the name of the client on the screen. So we go to fuel response. Before you start, make sure you're eligible, etc. Is the business in a fuel-dependent industry or related, impacted by a related supply chain? So yes, this just those eligibility criteria. You're affected by fuel prices, and will it cause financial difficulty? If I say no, there's no help for you. So you've got to be in difficulty and have a tax debt. So let's say yes, so we can continue the process. So what are our 2 options? You may need to vary your pay-as-you-go installments. So if you're a company or a sole trader, or let's say if you're a business, each quarter, when you do your BAS, you pay GST, you pay withholding tax you've taken out of employee pay, and you pay pay-as-you-go installments, which is you making a down payment towards your next tax return. So we're up to the March quarter BASs at the moment. Any pay-as-you-go tax paid in the March quarter will be part of your March 2000. It will be part of your 2026 business tax return. So you could say, do I intend to vary your installments? Yes. And fuel response payment plan. You may need to set up or change a payment plan if rising costs have affected your business. Let's say no to start with. They're going to ask for your contact details. If we say yes, they'll still ask for your contact details. If we say no and yes, they'll still ask for your contact details. So if we say no, say bad luck. But let's say, yeah, we need to enter into a payment plan. You put your contact details in. So Jared at Mitchell Wilson, etc., and then press submit. As to what happens next, I'm not sure. So looks like the process of how these payment plans are going to be applied for doesn't exist yet. So I think the contact details are going to be, they'll email you to say fuel payment plans are now available online. You can, whereas at the moment you can only enter into ordinary payment plans through online services. I think this is just updating you as to when you can do these new payment plans. So what would be my advice for a business in this situation? Talk to your accountant if you're struggling to pay tax debts or you're behind on lodgements. All right. So in terms of lodgements, if you have VASs and you don't think you're going to be able to afford to pay them, lodge them anyway. Okay, because you don't want to have an overdue lodgement obligation because it's going to attract more ATO attention. And you've got failure to lodge penalties, which can be in excess of, if it's about 300 and something a month, it's over $1,500 for 5 months. So the maximum per month fine is 5 months. So just lodge anyway, even if you can't pay. And talk to your accountant because there are different options. There are payment plans. If you're in serious hardship, there are more, I guess, serious steps you might want to take. The ATO is on the warpath, right? So they have this attitude, false, I believe, but doesn't matter, that, oh, we were really kind to businesses during the lockdowns and we gave them, you know, different handouts and we didn't chase debts as hard and all that sort of stuff. But now those days are over and they've actually become even more harsh than they were pre-lockdown. So they're issuing what's called director penalty notices where they're trying to transfer company debts onto the individuals. So even if your company gets wound up, they can still target you personally, go after your house, your assets. We're seeing more of that. We're seeing more reminder letters and threat letters. We're seeing more no's to like rejections of remission of interest requests, even ones that seem really reasonable and would have always been a yes in the past. So don't, should the ATO be treating the wider community like this, and should they be targeting small businesses and middle class people to try and raise more revenue? Of course, I disagree with that, but the reality is that that's what they do. They go after the middle class, they go after medium businesses and small businesses. So just don't just let it run. If you've got these debts and overdue obligations, you can at least catch up on lodgements relatively easily, and there are ways of paying off a debt. If you are a small business, you get to the end of the quarter and you've got less money than you've got for the obligations you've got. So you might have GST, withholding tax, pay-as-you-go installments. Pay super first and think about varying your company tax down. But late super has bigger consequences than late BASs. Plus, payday super laws start in July 2026. So when you post your pay run, you make your super payment the same day. And that's going to be law from July 2026. You need to be up to date on super and be in the habit of paying on payday to get ready for that change. But if you only pay one of your quarterly obligations, make it super first. If you have unpaid debts, enter into a payment plan, whether or not you're eligible for these special payment plans. Because the ATO doesn't chase, they have three statuses for a debt. There's paid, there's overdue, and there's payment plan. You want to get out of that overdue category. If you can't pay, do payment plan. Budget for tax as you go. It's so common for a small business to use the GST, instead of setting aside their GST and their tax and whatever else, they just use that for cash flow, and they would try and hope that they can pay the March quarter obligations with some June quarter profits. You're always a quarter behind. You just need one bad quarter and then you're heading down the path to bankruptcy. And finally, consider your business viability. So do you need to get external finance? Do you need to seek business loans? There are more flexible business loan products out there now. So you can get loans where they're essentially at call. So you can draw down on the loan when you need the cash flow, and you can pay it back when your customer pays you. Um, Consider something like that, and then consider the very difficult options of restructuring or selling or closing. So the small business restructure scheme still exists. That's where it's a alternative to closing a business or liquidating. So it's where you can reduce your debts through a government sanctioned scheme, including ATO debts, so that the business can continue as it is instead of having to close. And there are situations where you're in such debt, especially if there's a director penalty notice um, that's been issued. You've got about a month to act on that, or else that could become your debt. And in those situations, it's sometimes easier just to wind up the company. It's a massive choice because it's such an emotional issue, but it really needs to be on the table if you don't think you're going to ever make up this debt. There's no point just languishing in debt forever. So hopefully that helps. Um, I've put the contact details for the Mitchell Wilson part of the business. That's our business and super fund division. That's how you can get in touch with us. Hopefully that's been some useful information to you, or you might know somebody who is in a fuel dependent industry who might find this useful. Feel free to share that with them. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.